live round 2. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to CX Club Live Round 2. For anybody who joined us 2 weeks ago, you'll understand the format. I introduce the CX Club team. 2 of my good friends, Steve Sullivan and Amy Carnan, will be joining me in a second. And this week, for the first time, we have a special guest joining us. So the format of the show is really to talk about, as we call it, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the CX world. Hopefully, we will have slightly fewer technical problems than we had a couple of weeks ago. The good of customer experience is the good experiences that we've had as individuals, and Steve, Amy, and myself will be talking about those. The bad ones that relate to those good experiences, and then when we talk about the ugly, what we're really talking about is what we might consider to be poor customer experience practices. So those people who operate within the customer experience space, the professionals, so to speak, the things that we feel need to be done differently in order to bring customer experience as a business discipline up to the next level, so to speak. So without further ado, I will invite my good chums onto the call. So here we go. Steve, how are you?
Good, thanks. I've been self-isolating, so I haven't done anything since the last CX Club, and I haven't changed my clothes either.
So Steve thinks self-isolation means that he can't wash his clothes.
Exactly.
No real incentive, but I'm allowed out tomorrow, so it'll all change.
Hi, Amy. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
You actually look. Yeah, I was going to say you look like you've washed your clothes. Like for me, I do have a similar problem, Steve. I change my clothes, but I forgot to take the old ones off. So I just have, like that's why I look fatter than I actually am. I'm actually a very, very skinny man. I just wear a lot of dirty layers under my existing clothes. So I've just been. Holy, did you guys hear the introduction? Was there any glitchiness in the introduction compared to the previous week?
Much better.
Oh, that's much better. I have to say, Amy, you looking very glamorous today. Steve and I have gone for the middle-aged man blue cardigan stroke jumper
Don't
look.
worry, I coordinate with the team. I have a little bit of blue going on here as well.
I know, but you look a lot posh. It's like two northern grunts and this very sophisticated person bringing up the standards.
It makes a difference when you change your clothes, I guess.
Steve, that's what we've been doing wrong. That's
right, making notes.
Change clothes. Oh yeah. Okay. Right. So what I've decided to do this time around is we're going to have a special guest joining us on today's show, because I thought a bit more fun, because otherwise it's just the three of us whinging about all our terrible experiences. So we're going to have a special guest joining us in. But before we invite that special guest on, what I'd like to do is talk about, again, go back over the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm going to throw Amy in at the deep end this week. Amy, so what have you got to share with the good and the bad, the ugly of customer experience that you've come across?
Oh, my good definitely has to be Virgin Media. So I think last week I was talking about the issues I was having with PlusNet the last time we were on. So I decided, okay, right, enough's enough. So I'll change over to another provider. So I've had Virgin Media come along and do the installation. They located an old box that I had, so they managed to not drill any holes anywhere. They took the wire around, got everything set up, told me exactly what I needed to do. And one thing which really intrigued me at the end, when the gentleman was leaving, he handed me this card and he said, "You get an email, and could you grade that email when you get it? It's to do with the customer experience that you've received." And he goes, "It's not to mark Virgin Media, it's to mark how you found I performed today. And he on the bit of paper, I don't actually have it here, but on it he actually circled what he would like to say. He goes, if you think I've been really good, can you circle these? So he marked it, and he said, if I get these, and it was an 8 and a 9, obviously. He said, if you mark me as these, I get a £10 bonus. But he said, do remember that you're not marking Virgin Media, you're marking me. And I was like, okay. So
he's still gaming the system, Amy. He's still gaming the system.
I did think that, and I thought, okay, well, I think for me, what struck me was what he was saying was it's not Virgin Media you're grading. You're grading the experience of him actually coming to visit you, and it's personal to him, which is one of the things I think people are trying now. But obviously, it doesn't give a true reading of the company as a whole, but it does give you a reading of the people that are in that organisation. So,
how did you feel about that, Amy?
I like the transparency. She told me that I was grading him and not the organisation. And although the one thing I did think is, okay, I already know about customer experience, so I know that this will then reflect onto the whole brand. But other people who wouldn't know, sorry, my screen's flipping all over the place. So other people who wouldn't know, they would be none the wiser that the higher you mark this young man, and if everywhere he goes, it all adds up to the total output for the organisation.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's the only thing, because I knew about it. It's different, I guess.
Yeah, I get it. But you had that knowledge, so you're aware of what was going on. But before we move on to your good and your ugly, Amy, Steve, what's your take on the chap asking, guiding Amy in what was going on?
Well, yeah, it's a classic case of people responding to the incentives you give them, isn't it? He's a rational actor, that elusive thing in the world of customer experience. So, yeah, somebody should do a little study on him. Say it's simple. Incentivize somebody for tenner. But I love it. The fact they actually told you what to circle on the card. I think he might be a behavioural economist or something.
He actually circled it on the card. He said, you receive an email and it will look, and these are the ones you should circle in order for me to get my £10.
So that was very, what he did was exceptionally clever, but I have kind of mixed feelings about what he did. Because I think in one way what he did was positive, because what he did was said that this is a transactional interaction, and what we mean by that is this isn't about Virgin Media, this is about me. So that what he was trying to do is get you to disassociate your feelings between Virgin Media, the brand, and Virgin Media, the individual who's standing in front of you. So that was clever, but the very fact that he kind of circled the marks is a clear example of gaming the system, and how these people obviously they're that they receive £10 gift voucher or whatever if you give them a positive mark, and they're clearly gaming the system. So it would be interesting at some point if we presented that to Virgin Media, how they would feel about that, and what kind of response they might give to your story. So we'll have to play back a recording as well. So anyway, to move on, what about your good and your ugly experiences? Oh, sorry, your bad and your ugly experiences.
My bad experience would have been so I had a boiler installed, and this is going back at least I think we spoke about it earlier in the week. So I had a boiler installed, and it was middle of winter, freezing cold, and the boiler, as always boilers happen, it always conks out in the winter. It never conks out in the summer. So anyway, this boiler stopped working in the middle of winter. It's freezing cold, and I thought, that's fine. What I'll do is I've got warranty on it. I'll bring them up, and they'll just give me a replacement. And I got the warranty out, and I was like, okay, it's a day. Literally, it was a day out. It expired the day before the phone go to. So I phoned them, and they were absolutely like, no way. We can't do anything. It's a day too late. You'll have to get a new boiler. We can't do anything. They're just like, it is only a day out. It's the middle of winter. By the time I order another one, get somebody in, it's going to take so long. But they were so unhelpful. And I think the fact that, at that time, my daughter was very young. And even the fact that she was young, and I was saying, look, I've got a young child, and, it's not just about that. It is so cold. they weren't having it. So I was like, okay. So that was, I think the fact that there was no human element to it, I think that was quite challenging. Because I think when I said, okay, I've got a child and she is young, and we're at home and we do need the boiler. Just the fact that they couldn't help, I think more the fact that they didn't even think about trying to help. That's what it felt like. Sort of like, no, the paper says, the robot said no. That's it.
Job's worth.
Yeah,
the job's worth.
That what I would say is my bad experience.
Okay, and what about in terms of CX practice or practice as a project stroke program manager? What can you highlight there, Amy, as being ugly?
So ugly, I would say I put a post out, I think it was last week, and I know everybody's been talking about it, where the NHS system fell over and they couldn't put the track and trace. They had a whole load of positive tests that were delayed. So it brought a question to my mind. The Excel tool itself is wonderful. I mean, I'm a huge fan and I use Excel excessively. But then it begged the question, was Excel the right tool to put millions and millions of records through in order to provide information to the nation? Or should it have been, in this day and age, should it have been a different tool that was used? And I think that to me was, okay, that's terrible. That was really bad practice. The tool should be assessed on, how often is it going to be used? How heavily is it going to be used? And what is it going to be used for? It sort of seems as though those assessments weren't done. It seems as though it was a patch job.
Absolutely. And interestingly, one thing I learned a few years ago when Excel was being used is that how incredibly hackable it is. So in Steve's capacity as sort of data privacy guru and GDPR guy, I would imagine the heads are probably sticking up on the back of your neck when we're talking about stuff like that, Steve.
Yeah, that's my understanding. And certainly, if you password protect an Excel sheet, it doesn't protect you from anybody who wants to get into it, but it would protect you from the likes of me. You wouldn't have a clue, to be fair.
and Steve, I was thinking when Amy was talking about Excel spreadsheets, I have seen in so many instances where projects I've been working on, where you talk about, okay, we want to change process. We want to train people on how to do things differently. The only way of making that real is to make sure that it's integrated into the process that they follow. The only way to make sure that the process is properly followed is if you integrate it into the system. But we all know from a large scale system changes, making those, you want to do something quick and dirty to make sure that the people in the contact center are doing things in the right way. But the problem is it's always going to be held back by the fact that a systems change or some kind of IT change always takes such a long time, which is why often things like Excel get used as a workaround in the short term, but with a plan to eventually move over to the system. Have you, and then what happens is nobody ever actually gets round to properly making the changes in the system. Have you seen that as well, Steve?
Yeah, loads of times. And I think I always remember, I think this must have been about 2015. I was working with some big global organization, and they were talking about doing stuff in terms of customer contact. They want to bring in chat, and I was sort of discussing it with them. And I said, "Well, what's the problem? I think it was quite seasonal." I said, "Well, is there a kind of development freeze? Is that what it is?" And the digital director said, "Well, it's not really a development freeze." He said, "We just have to fit in with the IT delivery schedule." And I said, "Well, okay, so when's the next slot?" And he said, 2026.
Yeah,
I kid you not, it was more than 10 years in the future.
And what they do is you bring a new requirement along, and it's almost as if your new requirement has to go to the bottom of the list. So we've got our work planned out for the next 7 years, and therefore whatever you bring along, I'm sorry, but you've got to get to the back of the queue, mate. So this is always the challenge. Okay, thank you very much, Amy, and thank you very much for your commentaries, everybody. Steve, what are you in terms of good, bad, and ugly?
Well, I've got two things which could be good and could be bad. So Amy's just reminded me actually of one of them, which is about 2 weeks in, there hasn't been a track and trace contact for my son who's tested positive, and that's could be good, could be bad. I mean, from a sort of containing the global pandemic is bad, but from a customer perspective, it's probably good, because we keep hearing stories that the number of people that most of us can recall being in contact with is relatively limited. And then there tends to be this cascade of calls amongst that group of people. So we've got a friend whose daughter's in her first year at university in Manchester. Her and our all her 7 other flatmates trekked down to get tested, all came back positive. Then the flat above them went and got tested, and they all came back positive. And then almost instantly, as a result, everyone then got 15 phone calls, which related from all the other people in those 2 flats who knew them and had shared their number. So it was this explosion of contacts. So,
oh gosh, that must have been a
nightmare. It's not a well-developed system, but from a customer perspective, that could have been quite unpleasant. So I'll dodge that one.
Okay.
And the other one, which is either good or bad, depending on how you look at it, which is something I put on LinkedIn the other day, is I came across a story that Lidl, who apparently in different markets are going into doing things online, unsurprisingly, and were busily recruiting at the end of last year for their digital logistics team in the UK to do online grocery ordering and delivering. And this week, they've disbanded that whole team and have said, we're not doing anything online in the UK. We're going to focus to our traditional model. So some people might think that's terrible and regressive. Other people might say, well, stick to what you know. And
well, it's interesting. I tend to feel, my initial reaction was that it is regressive from the perspective of if you look at what happened with Primark, when all of a sudden, Primark, I would have thought would have been primed to suddenly just take everything they sell in the store and put it online. And then all of a sudden when COVID hit, it pretty much killed their business overnight. So with something like Aldi or Lidl, I understand what their traditional model is. But I think somebody earlier this week, somebody within our little group here mentioned the possibility of using third party. What if used a third party like Deliveroo or somebody like that?
That's an idea from my pal Roy Holmes, who may well be inventing it as we speak. Yeah.
Well done, Roy Holmes. But providing like that third party e-commerce. Okay, what about ugly? And don't say me, Steve, because I've had that joke enough times already.
I haven't got an ugly prepared, and I haven't been out of the house for 2 weeks, so you can't really pick on me.
No, that's not fair. Okay, I won't do that. I'm going to quickly tell you about my good, bad, and ugly. I go back a few years as well, Amy, and I have a good one and a bad one that kind of relate to each other. I'll start with the bad. It's very similar to your boiler story, whereby I had a flat screen TV. It had 2 years warranty on it, and after about a week after the 2-year warranty ran out, the screen went. And I went back to Comet, who are no longer in business, if we remember them going bust years ago. And I went to them and said, look, it's only 2 weeks out of warranty. And they went, sorry, mate, hard luck. And I tried to go and get it repaired, and I did a number of different things. And the repair shop I went to said to me, you're going to have to buy a new TV, because to repair your screen is actually going to cost you more than actually buying a new TV. So you might as well just go and get a new one. But they recommended that I went to John Lewis, and they said, by the way, all John Lewis TVs now have a 2-year warranty built in automatically. So I went to John Lewis, never knowingly undersold, which is their brand promise, which is perfect within the CX world. And it wasn't that they were the cheapest; they were reasonably priced from what I could see from the research that I did. But the never knowingly undersold also related to the fact that they built that warranty automatically into the deal. And I always overlook insurance when someone says, would you like to buy a product? And by the way, would you like additional assurance? Because I'm a cheap northerner, I always go, or a Yorkshireman with my hands stuck in my pockets, I go, no, thank you. But the very fact that what John Lewis said, they had built that insurance into the sale or price of the TV, it was the reason why I bought their TV. And not only that, but a year into having their TV, the screen went. So I called them up, and they came out and they replaced the panel. There were two guys there for within the space of a very, very short time. And within half an hour, they'd replaced the panel, and the TV's still working today. So that's an example of how somebody can get it right. Comet didn't have a brand promise. They didn't try and deliver against the brand promise. Whereas what John Lewis did, and this isn't just a customer service thing for me; it's a customer experience thing as well, is that they make a very clear brand promise, never knowingly unsold. They took the risk of building the price of the insurance into the sale price of the TV, and they went and they marketed on that basis, and as a result of that, they were very, very, very successful. So good, but that's my good and bad. My ugly story, and it's one of the things that really I see regularly, and a lot of practitioners complain about this, and I'm one of those practitioners. I have to say, transactional MPS, and Christopher's going to come on in a second, and I know that he's got a number of views about MPS as well that he'd like to share with us. But it's interesting what you said, Amy, about that Guardian Media pointing you in the direction of a particular metric and saying this is about me and it's not about the company. For me, that highlights one of the weaknesses, in my opinion, of transactional MPS. You know, the question of, would you recommend this company on the basis of the interaction that you've just had with this particular individual? It's unnatural. It doesn't work for, if you incentivize the people, they will game it. If you don't incentivize them, they will feel as if they're being personally blamed for all of the woes of the organization. Not a big fan. Relationship MPS, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's certainly better, in my opinion, than transactional MPS, which I really, really don't think is worthwhile. Anyway, so we've gone through in 20 minutes, we've gone through our good, bad, and ugly. Sorry, Steve, did you want to say something?
Just we got some chats, and as usual, I could only see 2 chats at a time, so that hasn't got any better compared to last week.
I can't see any chats at all.
So the chat is coming in from LinkedIn. Jason.
Oh, we got him. Oh, he's my old mate. He's a Bradford boy.
Yes, he is. Yeah, we realise he's from Bradford. He's from your area of the woods. He said, "Easy, Ian. We aren't cheap. We are careful."
Jason, I've been to the pub with you so many times, mate. I know that you're cheap, mate. So.
And Mark Rayson said that he hasn't washed his clothes, I think he said, but I can't see that one because I was just gone off. But those chats on the side of LinkedIn. Mark and I have a bit of a creative project going on together, and I can tell you, for having known more 17 years, because his daughter's just turned 7, met through NCT classes, that Mark has never actually changed his clothes. And what he does is he goes in the shower fully clothed and then just rubs his clothes down with a bar of soap on the outside. So that's the way he does it. And okay, so we've got Mark and we got Jace on the call. Nice to see you, gentle ladies. Right, it's now time to bring on my good friend, Mr. Christopher Brooks. Wait a minute, here he comes. Wait a minute, is he on screen yet? I can see. Hey!
Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon.
How are you?
Hi, Christopher.
I'm delighted to be one of the corners in your window here. This is fabulous. Thank you for inviting me.
Was it Play School that had corners for Windows? Was it? I'm going back now.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember.
Window, didn't you? Either the square or the round or the oval. A forerunner to the Greg Wallace program. So they always used to go into a factory, didn't they, and see things were made. Do you remember in Play School? That's what you used to do.
Right. Okay. I don't know the Greg Wallace thing.
He does the grown-ups version of Play School.
Oh, does he? Right. Okay. I'll have to watch that. So, how are things going with you, Christopher? All right.
Oh, good. Yeah, been a busy week. Been doing a lot of judging this week. Customer CX Leader of the Year for my customer. So the final of that, and then yesterday was the CX Awards at a virtual Wembley. So good stuff.
At a virtual Wembley.
Yeah.
Did you get to walk the virtual hallowed turf?
No, we just got to see a picture of Wembley in the background because that's where it normally is at.
All right. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us, Christopher.
You're welcome.
Always lovely to get your expertise and insight. Can you share with us in terms of your views on good, bad, and ugly customer experience?
Well, my good them awards international yesterday. They transferred a live event to a virtual event, and it went on from 8:30 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. It had a disco in it.
Wow!
It had rock bingo. Disco. We had a magician. There was disco going on. There's a magician.
Was it disco like what were they dancing?
There
like,
was judging rooms for judges. So you had companies. If they had 3 or 4 people together, they were getting up in the evening and boogieing. So wore dinner suits with bow ties. So the guys, Neil and the guys at Award National put on a really good show. But the thing I wanted to note in it, the good was, as a chair of the judges, I had technology wasn't working. I didn't get stressed about it. She took care of everything. Katerina, I'll give her a shout out. And it was a really smart additional introduction to the event that just took all the anxiety away from me and the presenters and the other judges. So that's my good. Didn't need to do that.
I think we could have
given us responsibility, but it was
okay. Well done for looking after Christopher. I think we may have a little bit of usually the satellite delay is at my end, but you might be having a bit of satellite delay at the moment, Christopher. I don't know. Is everybody getting? No, it's not your fault. You should not take personal responsibility. Okay, so well done, Awards International. That's I can never pronounce his name. Is that Neil Skahel?
Yes.
Or is that how you pronounce his surname?
Skell, how I say, but that's probably wrong as well. So
it's Skehel, I think.
I've only ever tried Neil. I know him as Neil. He's a very
Neil. That is the
unforgettable fellow. He's a lovely guy.
Okay, are you prepared to share your bad and your ugly?
I'll share my bad. I'm still doing my bad actually. My bad. It's 3.
Ooh.
So I've got too many contracts with those 2, and I kind of said to myself, I'm going to get them sorted out. Something's been stopping me doing it because I was worried about losing time and getting it and coming out with a worse deal. Well, I managed my own expectations really well because all those things happened. So I went down to 3 with 2 contracts.
Sorry, that's 3
mobile, yeah.
That's 3 mobile then.
3 mobile, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I went down with 2 contracts I paid for that I couldn't work out what I paid for. There, they said, "Oh, we can't help you with that. We'll give you a telephone number, and you can call up and you can cancel them." So, okay. Well, I'll put mine onto loudspeaker, and we can do that together in the shop, and you a better deal. And I said, I don't really need a better deal. I want to leave. And she said, but I can get you a good deal for some data for one of. An hour and a quarter later, I was still there, waiting for the deal to be agreed. I was still on hold, waiting to cancel the 2 other policies. Managed to save 9 pence on my contract. The irony.
9p.
9p. Well, in fact, I've not, because I've still not been able to cancel the other 2 contracts. I've now got 3. I went in with 2 contracts and I came out with 3. But most amusingly, the hold music kept repeating Otis Redding's Sitting on the Dock of a Bay. And if you remember, there's a great line in there that it says wasting time. I've still got to sort it out. So it's my challenge for the weekend. Disproportionate use of my time.
So wasting time, sitting on the dock of the bay, watching
the tide
it
roll
talks
away.
about
wasting time.
Time roll away, wasting time. Yeah, and I guess that's exactly what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
We should have a bit of a sing song now. Okay, and
if
that's not
sorry.
Yeah, and that's something I've been looking at the well, actually, Steve, Amy, and I have been looking at a couple of RFPs, and I think that you've had a peek at one of them as well, Christopher, because we need your help and support on one of them. In terms of it's amazing how much omni-channel gets mentioned, but the question is how realistic is omni-channel, because it gets talked about a lot. But how do you think there are organizations that get omni-channel right today?
Well, I think that has really been a wake-up call for them, because I said to them, why would I take a contract with you if this is the service I've got to do? It's much quicker. So, you've actually got companies realizing their own omni-channel experiences is broken. So I don't know, are there really good ones? I love ASOS. I think ASOS are brilliant. They're very, very controlled about the channels. They're very careful about their channel management. So yeah, and maybe if you're a new company, it's easier to do. So that's my good and my bad.
Well, it's interesting when First Direct first started out, they were all obviously it was telephone banking and that's all it was, but they started with a clean sheet of paper, which is why the experience was so good. But even organizations like First Direct have struggled. We've decided to move their telephone banking onto other channels because you're never starting with a clean sheet of paper.
No.
But the whole omni-channel experience, when you get somebody saying go onto our web chat because it'll be much quicker, it just goes to show you that for me, I'm an old guy. I'm 50 years old. I don't necessarily want to go on web chat. I prefer dealing with somebody either face to face or on the telephone, because I know that if I get through to somebody, then my issue should be resolved then and there. But if you're now getting told to be pushed towards a channel which for you isn't your preferred channel, it shows that that organization is pushing a lot of time and attention towards developing channels for a completely different audience to you. And what it makes me feel like is if somebody says go on web chat, you'll be a lot quicker, it makes me feel as if they don't care about me as a customer. They want to push me down a channel that is suitable to somebody who isn't me. And for me, this is where you have people talk about multi-channel and omni-channel, and they use those two phrases interchangeably. But we got to be really, really careful that they're not the same thing. Multi-channel, the whole point of omni-channel is being able to move from one channel to another seamlessly, and the organization doesn't lose contact with that person irrespective of which channel that customer is coming to the organization on. In my experience, we are a long way off omni-channel being done really, really well.
I'd agree. I think you're absolutely right.
What are your observations?
Well, just agreeing with Christopher, I think it's about that curse of legacy, isn't it? It's almost always the case that you can get somewhere, but it's probably best off not to start from here unless you're new to the game. So people like ASOS, and maybe I'd have to talk to my daughter upstairs, but I think sort of I'm trying to think the names.
Misguided.
Misguided. Thank you, Amy. Those kind of newer online fashion brands, have done quite a good job of saying you'll communicate with us how we want you to communicate with us, which probably isn't a challenge if you're talking to, the under 25s, but would be a challenge in the unlikely event of somebody like me stumbling on wants to contact them. But yeah, if it's a lot easier if you define your the channels that you will allow your customers to use.
Yeah.
And I think what we've to some extent seen through COVID is more brands trying to sort of retrofit that because it suits them, or because they were unable to deliver voice when they sent everybody home, or whatever it might be. And yeah, to Ian's point, that's absolutely not omni-channel. And I think the thing about the multi-channel, omni-channel definitional thing, to make it really easy, you just say to people, you know, that thing when you contact them again, and then you have to repeat everything all over again. Oh yeah, and everybody knows what that means. Or you make a phone call, or you go online and you complete a form, or you go through an IVR, and then the first question you asked is, can you give me your order number? Can you give me your account number? I've already done it. And that's unbelievable how often that happens. So,
I was ringing GoDaddy today, and I had a similar experience where they said, please, can you type your customer number in on the IVR so that we can take you through security? So you go through the process of putting your customer number in and clarifying who you are, so that when the agent speaks to you, they don't have to take you through security. They don't have to confirm who you are. And then when you get through to the agent, they're asking exactly the same information that you've just typed into their IVR. So that's a perfect example of a system going wrong. And they think that they're being super secure and keeping you happy because they're protecting your security. But what they're really doing is just making you jump through the same hoop twice.
Yes, definitely. That's what it sounds like. Banks do that quite a lot, don't they? As they pass you around, even if it's not majorly secure information, banks do that quite a lot. When you ring a bank, they'll ask you for your security details, you give them, and then they go, I'm going to transfer you to this department. Even if they do a live transfer where one advisor is speaking to another, says, I'm passing you through, they still go through security questions again. So they must be going from system to system rather than just passing you on. It's going to a completely different solution.
And that's part of the problem when we talk about omni-channel. It's not just the interaction between the customer and the organization. It's also the interaction between one part of the organization and another part of the organization. And the fact that this is something that we've been looking at within an RFP recently, the inability to have what organizations call a single customer view. Because if you've got one part of the organization dealing with a particular part of the customer's data and another part of the organization dealing with a different part of the customer's data, that's where it falls down, because they have to qualify who you are through, as you say, Amy, completely different data sets. And that's a significant part of omni-channel going wrong.
Yes.
It's always an odd expression, I think, single customer view, because
I think you've died.
You can see the bit of it on, not the rest of it.
Sorry, do you mean the data that we don't hold about the customer, Christopher?
Yeah, so if I have a relationship with an organisation and it says it has a single customer view about me, it does with me, that does a single record view or a single thing about that customer that makes sense. I'm looking at it from the customer's perspective rather than the company's perspective. So you're never going to be able to see everything about that customer. You're only going to see the extent of the relationship you have with that customer. So it's very difficult to be predictive on that basis.
Yes. Yeah, of course. I get your point, Christopher, that having a single customer view doesn't mean that we know everything about that customer. However, what I would suggest for most organizations, where at the moment it would be good if every single part of that organization was able to share exactly the same information about the customer from what the organization holds. It's not a complete view of the customer, but at least everybody in the organization is viewing the customer in the same way. And for a lot of organizations that I've dealt with in the past, they've even not got to that point where the whole of the business is looking at the customer sharing exactly the same information. So I think there needs to be a differentiation between single customer view and complete customer view. And we're not going to get to that complete customer view until omni-channel truly is omni-channel, whereby we can access every single piece of information about the customer that exists in the entire world, to be able to provide them with an accurate service, so to speak. And for me, that's what true omni-channel truly is. But I'm being all theoretical and hypothetical now. Sorry, Steve.
No, and it's also an increasing challenge to know everything that's out there in the world about the brand. So, in the old days, there might have been a job or product on page 7 of the Daily Mail. Well, the world's not like that now. With social, you get quite often, depending on the context, I've been in contact centres and customers are making contact about a marketing communication they've received from the brand. And it's very rare that the degree of that single view within the organisation allows the service people to see what marketing automation's been spewing out. And that quite often triggers A, a query, B, confusion, and C, a potential sales opportunity that already the service people are on a back foot because they don't know what's been communicated with the customer.
And that's made especially tricky nowadays, because this is one of the reasons why we've seen the growth of end-to-end marketing communication systems like HubSpot, for example, because there is so much marketing information now that's getting shared across social media. You might get something that's going crazy on social media, but unless you've got proper social listening in place, it's going to be impossible in your contact center who are getting 10,000 calls because of something that's just been spread virally, and being able to relate that back to their individual product. So for me, the whole omni-channel view is we're a long way from being truly omni-channel. That's just my opinion anyway. Just to come back to you, Christopher, because we haven't actually visited your ugly, so to speak, but I recall from a conversation that I had with you earlier that you were talking, was it something about MPS that you wanted to talk about, Christopher?
Yeah, it was. So part of the awards yesterday, the guest speaker was Fred Reichard, the creator of the original Net Promoter Score under certain conditions and point about loyalty. One of them was, so after all this time, what do you think about it? And his response was very honest. And he kind of said, in the main, it's not a good thing. It's kind of, the intention was there.
Sorry, Christopher, you've gone a bit Skypey, but let me just clarify from what you're saying, that Fred Reichelt was asked how he felt about MPS, and his response was, on the whole, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, he said on balance, but he said actually it's actually the way it's been interpreted and the way it's been used. It's a bit like Tim Berners-Lee with the World Wide Web. It's not been used in the way he wanted it to be. And he actually said, I'm going to bring out a publication next year to try and right some of those wrongs. And the things he highlighted are the things that those who have concerns about NPS highlight as well. So I think what it kind of said to me was, bad thing is the way in which those who have taken it and forced it into companies used it and said it's to do a different job, and that's the problem. And I think that's, I felt sorry for him, because you could see he's created something that was to serve a purpose. Other people have taken it off him and commercialized it and used it to plug into organizations and trained and told people this is the thing to follow. And he's like, no, please don't put it against bonuses. Please don't use it as a measure for the executive board. That's not what it's about. And he said it actually comes down to something that you and I are very passionate about, and that's about customer purpose. Understand your customer purpose. What's your purpose is to serve your customers, be in service of your customers. So whilst I still have, I don't think necessarily, I would recommend this organization to another, is for me the right way to define and the right question to ask to get all of the reasons why you would choose an organization. I felt I had a lot of, I really felt for him yesterday. I really felt for him. I kind of saw a really great intention that, don't get me wrong, he's had a hell of a ride with it over the last few years, but kind of looking forward to next year to see what that looks like in terms of
what he comes up with.
Yeah, I mean, he explains it as the Net Promoter System, so he does get all of that. But it was really interesting.
The Net Promoter System, the first time I heard the system was Satmetrics. They referred to it as the Net Promoter System. But it's interesting what you say, Krista, because I've been... I don't want to be overly critical about the NPS score, because I think that I understand the reason why it was introduced. Years and years ago, people looked at customer satisfaction and they said, what are the weaknesses of it? One of the weaknesses being that it's very easy to ask the question, how satisfied are you? And as a respondent, you can just go down the middle of the paper going, oh yeah, I'm kind of satisfied. It doesn't evoke any true emotional response. That question, how satisfied are you? It doesn't help with that. Whereas the whole point of NPS, in my opinion, was that it was asking you, how prepared are you to put your personal relationships on the line in terms of recommending this? But the problem is that, and this is where NPS became a bit of a religion, is I've come across people who said to me, no, NPS is the only score. It's the best score. You should use it. You shouldn't use any other score. And everybody, you got the CSAT people, you have the customer effort people, you have the NPS people, and everybody shouting, saying, my score is the best. And I think it's fair enough to say that every score has its positives and every score has its negatives. In my view, the positive of the NPS is that it wasn't, for me, NPS was never about recommendation, right? And what I mean by that is it's how likely are you to recommend, but what it's really asking is how prepared are you to put your closest and most important relationships on the line? Because if you are, then you must be passionate about this particular product or brand. But what happened, as you quite rightly said, Christopher, it's been misused by so many different organizations who've said, okay, well, what this is about, we should use NPS as a predictor of the number of referrals that we get. Because if this is about recommendation, then we should be able to use the score to estimate how many referrals that we're going to get as a result of it. And for me, that's what that was never what NPS was around. And one of the other weaknesses of NPS, in my opinion, is this whole how likely are you to recommend? If a customer goes, I'm not likely to recommend, then you think that they're dissatisfied. But some customers will say, well, I'm not the kind of person who recommends anything to anybody. It doesn't mean I'm unhappy with the particular product. It just means that I'm not the kind of person who recommends. And I think I gave the example last week. How likely would you be to recommend your local STD clinic? It's not going to happen. Do you know what I mean? So there are so many things where, and I agree with you, Christopher. I think the NPS had good intentions at heart, but those religious cults come along and adopt it and misuse it and misinterpret it. Oh, one more example. I saw NPS used in the Middle East, and we did some focus groups with different ethnic groups. So obviously there's Arabs from Kuwait, where I was working. And then there's a big Asian population, because you've got a lot of professionals from Pakistan and India working in Kuwait as well. And when we actually did the focus groups, the Arab population were very, very negative about the brand that we were working with. And the Asian population were very positive about the brand. But then when we did NPS with those two groups, the scores were completely and utterly reversed. And I went to the guys that I was working with at Nielsen at the time and said, how come the focus group, the Indian focus group, was so positive, but the NPS score is so bad? And he said, it's part of Indian culture. Indian people would never give above a 7 or an 8 because they don't want the organization that they're working with to be complacent. So that's another potential weakness of NPS, is that it doesn't take those cultural differences. The Americans are happily give an 8 or 9 because they're the kind of people who, high five and slap each other on the back. But different cultures are not going to necessarily use it in the same way. So I'm glad to hear that Fred Reichelt said that, because at least there's an acknowledgement that the religion of MPS shouldn't exist.
Yeah, it was a really honest interview and rating of the man himself, and kind of could really empathise with the challenge that he's had. A similar story working in the gambling sector. And gambling, there's something, one of the cognitive biases is called Monte Carlo effect. And it's something that gamblers believe they will not associate with successful gamblers. To me,
we've lost him, I think.
Is one.
So we're losing you, Christopher. Your voice is dropping out, I'm afraid. We got the Monte Carlo effect, but I think that did you, Amy or Steve, did you catch any more than that, Christopher?
No, that's all I got, just up to Monte Carlo.
Okay. Sorry, Christopher. I think, Amy, you're going to have to recommend Virgin Media to Christopher.
Yes. Yeah, so we'll see. Then they'll say that then they'll mark that against their service rather than the service the young man provided.
So, Amy, you're from Luton, but originally of Indian heritage. Is that correct?
East Asia, yes.
Oh, sorry, not Indian, is it?
No, let's see if you can remember, because I'm sure we've
Bangladeshi.
Yeah.
That's right. Now, so what I spoke about in terms of Indian culture, would the same apply to Bangladeshi culture?
I don't actually think it's a cultural thing. I mean, there's also the thing about demographics, isn't it? If you're more attuned and you know what the NPS actually contributes towards, then you tend to mark people less, because you're exactly for the same reason. You don't want companies to become complacent. Because I know I've worked for an organisation I work for in England, and they found that the more affluent the customer base, the lower the NPS. There was a direct correlation, because it wasn't just the applicant, it was more about the education, because they knew what that mark was for. They didn't want the company to get complacent, so they wouldn't mark them high. Yet if they took that same NPS and put it into a deprived area, they got marked higher.
So that's really interesting, because the problem that you've got is that if you try and simplify anything, be that effort or satisfaction or recommendation, you try and keep the question as simple as possible.
Yeah.
But the problem is, the simpler that you make it, the more that people are going to interpret it in different ways.
Yeah.
So, for example, a lot of organizations moved, the customer effort score came along, and people spoke about, well, what we really need to do is we need to introduce customer effort, because what we want to try and do is make customers' life as simple and straightforward as possible. So forget about satisfaction, forget about recommendation. What about customer effort? Isn't customer effort something that's applicable in every single situation, in every single instance? And I sat there and I thought about this, and I thought, well, I can imagine that in the vast majority of instances, you would want to try and reduce effort. But what about, here's an example, if you were a student taking a degree at Oxford University. Now, part of the, getting the degree from Oxford is a significant brand on your CV. It's a significant brand in terms of what you're trying to achieve. But would you want the attainment of an Oxford University degree to be effortless?
So does it take the value away?
Yeah, exactly. So the question is are there some brands which are devalued and diminished if we try and take the effort away from them?
I think it can't be it cannot be a uniform approach across different industries and different sectors and different service providers. I think it depends on the customer. It depends on your customer base and what you're providing. So if we look at something Steve mentioned earlier about misguided, from what I remember, and I could be wrong, but Misguided also do very relatively cheap throwaway clothes. Not necessarily as cheap as Primark. They're a little bit higher, but their target audience is to have very clothes which you can regularly throw away and then easily replace and buy another set, and that's their audience. Now, if you're thinking about to make that effortless for them, what you have to do is make sure that you have a large amount of stock that's easily accessible, and that you can lots of different colors, and that it can be delivered very easily. There's not a wait. You should be able to cook on it on a Thursday night and have it there Friday morning to wear when you go out Friday night. So in that respect, you can say yes, it should be effortless, because that's what they are providing, aren't they? They're providing clothes which are quite disposable. But then when you compare it to Oxford University, you want to go walk away with knowing that you've put effort into it and that's worth something. So it might make part of your experience effortless, but you wouldn't apply it to the actual degree that you're doing. If you're not putting any brain power into it, then you walk away with a good feeling about your degree.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I think what this highlights is that there are different positives and negatives for lots of different schools. And the point that you made about Misguided, I think, is an interesting one, Amy, because with Misguided, if they are so throwaway clothes, organizations like that don't make a great deal of profit, but they rely on the cash flow.
Yeah.
And therefore, what you're saying is that people want lots of different color varieties and et cetera, et cetera. What that does is it means that they have to have a lot of their cash tied up in stock, which works against this high turnover, low margin model. So there's a bit of a contradiction to a certain degree with that kind of model. It's almost like, well, this is what we've got. Either you buy it or you don't buy it, which to a certain degree is I understand is what how Primark exists. It's nice to see you back online, Christopher.
Yeah, sorry about that. I got a message from the guys at the back end saying, sorry, it isn't you, it's us, and it dropped me out and then it brought me back for some reason. So I don't know what.
Oh, sorry. Which guys at the back end?
There's like a feedback box came up and said, it's not you, it's us. Give us some feedback. So I did.
Oh, was this the people at the my streaming service communicating with you?
I guess so. You're all very clear on everything now. Amy, I wanted to come back to you.
As are you. But the thing is that I'm going to, again, this is now a bad customer experience if we've now got our special guests coming onto the show and their stream, because I can now see that you've got like 4 green bars against your name.
Loads of bars and everything, yeah.
Whereas before it was yellow and it was constantly cutting in and out. So I'm gonna have a word with them because I will not continue to use this streaming service if we continue to get glitches as a result of that. Okay, well, look, it's we've come to nearly 5 o'clock. So we're coming to the end of the show. Can I thank you, Christopher, not just for turning up today and sharing your wisdom, but also for the support that you're providing Amy, Steve, and myself commercially at the moment. And hopefully between the 4 of us, there's a few pieces of work that we can land as a result of this. But
who knows? I'd like to have some fun on the way.
Who knows? Who knows? And I'd also like to wish everybody a very happy Friday and hope you have a wonderful weekend. Have you got what have you got planned, Amy? Oh, wait a minute. Do you do the family cooking day on a Friday?
Yes, it's not this weekend. It's alternate weekends because of COVID. Normally it's every Friday, but it's now alternate. So it's not my week this week. It'll be next week.
Okay. And Steve, when do you come out of lockdown?
This night or in the morning. I need to check with my medical advisor next door, but imminently. But
sorry, Amy,
I come back on and explain the Monte Carlo effect. I'm very keen to hear more about that next time. Next time he's on.
Oh, so just quickly run us by that, Christopher, the Monte Carlo effect, because I forgot I didn't know how to finish.
It's a cognitive bias thing for gamblers. They don't want to associate with successful gamblers because they believe they're less likely to succeed themselves. So if you're doing research with people in gambling and you say, are you likely to recommend this company to another? What you're going to get is all the people who are very bad gamblers saying yes, and all the people who are very good gamblers saying no. So you have to choose your metric. As you were saying, culturally, it's really important to understand the measures.
Yeah.
There you go. And the thing is that for those religious nuts who advocate one particular metric over another, I'd like to just state my position. There is no perfect metric, and one is not better than the other. It's different metrics for different circumstances. And I even advocate that if you're going to do customer feedback, why not use 3 or 4 metrics on the same survey? Why not? If it's the appropriate metric for the nature of the feedback that you're trying to obtain, why not use different metrics on different parts of your surveying?
I was interviewing.
Sorry, carry on, Christopher.
I was interviewing the CX punk Adrian Swinscoe, and he put it brilliant. To achieve.
Right, he's dropping out again. I can see his little red bars rather than the little yellow bars. Sorry, Christopher, you dropped out again, mate.
Don't worry.
We'll get you back up. I'm going to go and give the Restream guys a good smacking around, and then we'll get you back on, and maybe we'll get you and Adrian on at the same time, and we can have a chat about all of that. Anyway, it's gone past 5 o'clock, so I don't want to carry on too long because you guys have got Fridays to go and get involved in. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Have a wonderful Friday. Have a lovely, lovely weekend. If you've got any thoughts or ideas or feedback or want to be a special guest on a future show, please do come and approach us, and it would be lovely to see you on here at some point. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you in round 3 of CX Club Live very, very soon. So bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Even Steve's waved. Hey.